Joining me now is the CEO of Recastled, Kosha Gada. Kosha, great to see you. How are you?
Very well. Good to be with you, Rowan.
Listen, horrible news. It was July 4th, Independence Day yesterday. Really ghastly story. This character, Robert E. Crimo III, he's this 22-year-old nobody with a face tattoo until today when he's, from a rooftop, he fired on a parade in Chicago, killed at least 6 people, dozens more injured. Family's devastated. He's in custody. I don't know if we have any kind of motive yet. But Kosha, he obviously had some serious issues, but he managed to get a gun. What do you make of it?
Yes, this was meant to be a day of celebration, and for those people in Chicago, it's turned into a day of mourning, and our heart goes out to them. It's certainly very, very sad. But I think, this story, Rowan, is just a glaring example of what opponents of more and more gun restrictions will say, which is that leaping to access and availability of guns as the root cause, misses the point in the U.S. because the state of Illinois has very, very strict gun laws, strictest in the nation, and it's a popular misconception by people often abroad that think it's really easy to get it. It's not. The problem is the root cause is these types of people and what their motivations are. It's often a young, troubled male. In this case, we don't have the motive yet. There's some reporting suggesting that he had ties to Antifa, and it's a dereliction of duty by the FBI and others who know of these people. Like, there's some reports that he maybe was even on the watch list, and yet they know of it. So the problem is that you can't legislate against evil. Evil people are going to get guns, whether we have laws or not against them, and that's actually a bigger plague that's affecting American society right now for any number of reasons. And it's hard things that need to take place to mitigate that, and I don't see any evidence of that happening or the appetite for that happening right now.
There you go. Well, let's talk briefly about electric vehicles. So they're on their way to becoming much more affordable, apparently, they were told. And in fact, demand outstrips supply here in Australia. There you go. But what happens down the road, Kosha, when they all get plugged into the grid, along with the dishwasher and the air conditioning and everything else? Will our struggling system be able to cope with the EVs?
The reality is, the simple fact of the matter is, Australia needs coal and gas and nuclear energy in order to provide sufficient baseload power with or without EVs. And if EVs take off, that will only further amplify the demand, to your point. But even without that, that is what we need. And, other countries like China and India are massively investing in coal, while people here are worried about that and, signing on to net zero 2030, 2050, all of that. And then the other thing with nuclear is uranium. With 40% of the world's uranium reserves, we happily export it to other nations that use it for nuclear energy. Why not use it ourselves? That's going to be necessary regardless of what happens with electric vehicles. And if we expect demand for that to jump, all the more necessary.
Now, I wanted to talk about President Biden. We were just talking to James and Caroline about Biden and his tweet, which, unlike Donald Trump's tweets, which were famous and witty and sharp and all the rest of it, Biden's tweets are kind of semi-moronic. But anyway, he came under fire for this tweet that saying that companies running gas stations should bring down their prices at the pump. Now, the oil industry was asking if his tweet was the work of an intern. And as we said, Jeff Bezos says that clearly Biden doesn't understand the basics of economics and suggests that a mythical intern, i.e. probably Biden's and his team, go back to, university or college to study the basics of economics. How clueless are the Democrats about the economy? Does this concern you, Kosha?
Infamous, I think, is where those tweets are going to go down in the history books. And I think at best it's a glaring example of incompetence or lack of understanding. But more likely, they understand exactly what they're saying, and it's really a distraction or a deflection from their policies that have led to, in addition to the Russian war, which is not the core of it, that's maybe the last 20% of what's driving the increase in energy prices. 80% of it is a direct result of their policies, and this is a deflection of that. Everybody from the oil and gas industry body to Jeff Bezos, as you pointed out in the last segment, Rowan, called him out on that. And I think when he was pointing the finger at owners of gas companies, it's unclear whether he's referring to the big oil and gas refineries or the last point, the actual retail location, because
mom
those
and
are small
dad,
businesses.
exactly.
It's well known, the mom and dad shop, and it's well known that those are very low margin businesses. The net margin on gasoline is less than 2%. So those people have nowhere else to go. They make their money from the convenience store and the soda and snacks and all that you buy in there. And it's really not their responsibility. The responsibility right now is his. Open the Keystone Pipeline, take out risk with all this ESGs and other risks that's being introduced into the system. Oil companies are reducing supply because they don't know, what regulation they're going to be hit with tomorrow. That's what's leading to this, not the mom and pop trying to make a buck at the gas station.
Now, Kosha, what did you make of James Morrow's prediction that Biden is toast, that the Democrats, the left, are turning on him? What did you make of that prediction?
I think it's a sound one, and we've been talking about this, Rowan, how there's a growing chorus of people throwing him under the bus, and we see that. So, whether they take him out before 2024, which paves the way for Kamala to get into the seat, and that, sets up all sorts of other scenarios, or they just let him finish out his term, but then think of another, like a Gavin Newsom or somebody else to be the new frontrunner, remains to be seen. But, he's sinking in the polls. I think the Democrat Party sees it. People from Hillary to Michelle Obama's names are being floated, and I think it's open season. Anything is possible.
So where does that leave Trump, do you think?
Same thing. It's really, really hard to predict. I usually have a good sense of this, who might be the front runner, but that's Trump's MO, keeping everybody guessing. I do think that if he decides to get into the race, for better or for worse, it is his. The nomination is his for the taking. I just don't know, even somebody as popular as Governor DeSantis of Florida, I don't know that he'd be able to take that support, that loyal 20-30% of the Republican Party that supports Trump and continues to support them. That's what you need to win the nomination. I don't see anybody else being able to unseat him for that, but who knows if he's actually going to run or not. He's going to keep us guessing till the last possible minute.